Could you talk a little bit about your state of mind when you had your own encounters with law enforcement and kind of how that made you feel? Because I think it's hard for people to appreciate that unless you've been in that situation.
Well, this is a reference to the fact that in the acknowledgments to my book, I begin by acknowledging these 3 police officers who I had an encounter with several years ago when I was still fishing around for a book subject. I used to have very, very short hair, in part because I felt that that was most consistent with the desires of and wishes of my mother. And then I reached my mid-30s and I realized that I didn't really have to live my life entirely in accordance with the wishes of my mother. And so I grew my hair, and I just got it cut, so you're not seeing it in its full kind of Byzantine glory. And I discovered something that has been discovered by, and which is a routine and depressing fact of life for example, young African-American men, which is that when you grow your hair out, the cops take a particular interest in you. And so I went from having almost never gotten a speeding ticket to racking up the most astonishing series of tickets, and then culminating in this night when I was walking along 14th Street, and literally this unmarked cop car drives up on the sidewalk, cutting me off. 3 cops jump out and start interrogating me because they believe that I resemble a rapist who they've been looking for in the area. And as I pointed out to them, very nicely I would add, the rapist was both much younger than I am, much bigger than I am, and not nearly as good looking as I am. The only thing we had in common is a big head of fuzzy hair. And so that was a kind of aha moment for me. I'd heard about this for years, of course. This is a part of, and it never happened to me, though. And I suddenly realized, you know what? A lot is happening in the first 2 seconds. When people see you, they draw all kinds of conclusions, some of which are really, really good, and some of which are terrible. And that's interesting. It's both troubling and fascinating. And that was the kind of genesis for the book. And, you know, I kept growing my hair out as a kind of continuing science experiment. And, you know, it's true. It was like night and day. I went from law-abiding citizen to kind of badass. And, you know, there are moments in one's life when being perceived as a badass after a life of being considered a dork is actually quite a pleasant surprise. But it did have its downsides. It's absolutely true.